just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Hello, you lovely people, and welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show. Today's guest is Nick, the Raging Panda Culture. Thank you for listening to the Next Level Guys Show. This podcast is sponsored by many different affiliates. If you'd like to support the running of this podcast, simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and click on any of the company logos on that page. If you spend any money at all on those websites, a small percentage in commission is given back to nextlevelguy.com to help with the running. Thank you and happy shopping. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak to me, Nick. I'm really inspired by your story. Do you want to maybe just give a little overview of who you are to the listeners?
All right. My name is Nick Kolchar. I'm a retired Army sergeant. Basically, I was a combat engineer in the military. Our job was to seek out and find IEDs or other devices that could hinder other missions from taking place. I was catastrophically injured in 2008 by one of those roadside bombs. Spent the better part of 2.5 years in the hospital, having almost 60 major surgeries due to the amputation of both my legs above the knee. Since that time, I've started doing things as an adaptive athlete and motivational speaker, just trying to talk about my story, talk about some of the obstacles I faced in life, both prior, during, and post-military, as well as trying to inspire other individuals through different events and different competitions that I do to get out, get off the couch, and challenge themselves to not only improving their quality of life, but just to see how far they can push themselves to possibly being the best that they can be.
And you're certainly doing a very good job of it. Can you just give a little background on where you grew up, what made you join the Army, etc.?
All right, so I'm originally from Flint, Michigan. Went to school there for about half of my secondary education. Moved out to Montrose, Michigan, which is where I graduated. Shortly after that, my father became sick. Spent a couple years taking care of him till he passed away. Tried to work and keep my brother and put my brother through college and keep things afloat, as just life has a way of doing it. It caught up with me. A few bad decisions as a young man put me in a financial situation where I ended up losing my home, became homeless, was sleeping on my buddy's couch, and didn't have a whole lot of options or positive outlook at that point. So looked at the military. It had been something that I'd visited in the past, right after high school, as well as a couple other times. But like I say, with my father getting sick, that kind of took up most of my time. Finally didn't have really any excuses to not join or not be a part of something bigger than myself. So I joined the military, and the rest is kind of history.
Just every time I speak, learn more about you, the more inspired I get. So you've done some amazing things, but what do you think the Army taught you? Is there benefits that you could transfer into an everyday life?
No, absolutely. The Army teaches you a core set of values, honor, integrity, things of that nature, and those absolutely translate into everyday life. Those absolutely translate into, how I want to just live my life now. It can teach you resiliency and grit as well. Teaches you how to have to adapt to situations. Not everything goes as planned. Not even whenever you're not deployed, when you're just in the rear, and you're just doing your daily routine, I guess is the best way to put it in the military. If you're not deployed, if you're not at war, you have a daily routine similar to somebody that might go to an office. You wake up and you do PT, physical training in the morning. Then you have, a roll call at a certain time, and then you have your work day where you have certain tasks that have to be done. And it absolutely, you learn that it's, If you're 5 minutes early, you're 10 minutes late. So you learn to have to be on time, which is actually 10 to 15 minutes early to things. You learn how to be prepared for the situation. They always say if you're in the right place with the right uniform at the right time, you're doing the right thing. And that sort of stuff just translates into regular life. If you're dressed appropriately for the situation and you're in the right place and you're there 10 to 15 minutes early, chances are you're already off to a good start and whatever it is that you're about to do. And there's just a lot that the military, can teach you, basic, what might be considered basic life skills that, you might not necessarily get from your parents, or you don't necessarily get from, school or at any other point. Maybe you were taught some of these things in a loose fashion, but, as, growing up as a child, people very rarely will reinforce this sort of stuff in the way or at the level that the military will reinforce how important these things are. So there's absolutely quite a bit that can be taken from the military, just the military experience being a part of it, no matter what you did.
I mean, do you think that's something that a lot of modern-day men struggle with, is that, how to be a good man, how to have routine and discipline in their lives?
Oh, absolutely. You see it all over the place. Especially nowadays, you see people just lose their shit about, because they're prime example, candidate. The presidency here in America, people lose their shit because their candidate didn't win, and it's you need to reserve a little self-control. Maybe look at the bigger picture. Look at how your actions are going to possibly have an effect, or what the action-reaction is going to be. Absolutely, people just, especially now with social media, everybody's gotten everything so on demand, it's always a knee-jerk reaction to everything. People somehow have lost the ability to take a second to think, step back, compose themselves, and think, how is this, how are my actions going to represent myself or represent, me on a larger stage? Is this how I want to be represented? When I was younger, my father, taught me, hey, you're a Kolchar, that's your last name. When you write it out clear so people can see, carry it with pride. That's who you are. That's where you're from. And, the military just reinforced that. My very first day in my unit in the military, I showed up in a uniform that had just been bombed out during basic training from all the corrective training, where they make you do all sorts of ridiculousness, physical activities to try to get you to work as a unit and as a team. And the uniform, so the uniforms that you get in basic training are just usually beat up. And I showed up to my unit wearing one of those uniforms because, well, they hadn't issued me another one, so I didn't know any better. And I had this sergeant take me off to the side, and he fixed my pockets and straightened my uniform up and squared me away and said, you need to get a different uniform. This is unacceptable. You're representing something larger than yourself. And he's like, you look like a shitbag right now. And he's like, you need to remember that it says U.S. Army on one side. And he's like, you're representing something much larger than you, and you need to carry yourself in a certain fashion, because everything that you do resonates beyond just who you are as a person. And I think people forget that, or maybe people nowadays don't have something that they believe in or enough to want to carry themselves with a certain pride or respect. I'm not sure which one it is, but it's just, people just have these knee-jerk reactions nowadays when they need to take a step back, think about how they're representing themselves and whatever else it is that they may be representing, and move accordingly from there.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I was always brought up to think of others, show respect to elders, etc. And there's too many people who have that me attitude. It's all about them. And it's like you say, they're not believing in something bigger, doing something for others. I mean, what do you think makes a good man in your opinion?
They need to be able to take care of themselves, and they need to be able to take care of that for which they're responsible for. You have a set of values, whatever they are, something that you believe in, and live by those values and hold yourself accountable. We're not all, there are definitely experiences, that will be humbling, but that's life. That's what it's all about, being able to take them humbling experiences, reflect on them, and grow. And for me anyway, be able to take care of yourself and, be resilient. Find some level of grit within you, level of resiliency within you that allows you to overcome, because life's going to throw things at you. Nobody's going to have an easy journey. There's always going to be death, and there's always going to be things that happen and obscure occurrences and stuff that's unforeseen. And it's really, people just lose this understanding that it's not those circumstances or those situations that define you. It's typically how you respond to those situations, how you pull yourself back together, how you pull the people around you back together, things like that. And sometimes I think it's lost. It's a lost art.
Unfortunately, in today's society, it's a very lost art. Are you okay to talk about the injury itself, or?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I was just wondering if you could give just a sort of general description about how it happened. Because I read that you were in a hospital bed for 2 years, and then you've bounced back to inspire so many people, and you're inspiring and changing so many lives. But, can you just give a little background to what actually happened?
All right, so I was deployed in early 2008 to Sadr City, Iraq, and what our mission was, we were there to find roadside bombs, find IEDs, things of that nature. On August 26th, during one of these such missions, they had placed a device inside a shack that was kind of on the side of the road. And that's the best way to describe it, as a shack. But really what these were kind of like business fronts for the locals that lived in the neighborhood. They had these what looked like little shacks or shanties, and they would kind of operate businesses out of there. But somebody had placed a device in one of those shacks. Our 2 lead vehicles missed it because it was hidden very well, and they detonated it. They detonated the device on the vehicle that I was in. I was standing up as a machine gunner in the vehicle. The device came in on the passenger side, struck me directly through the thighs, and ended up embedding itself in the side of the vehicle on the driver's side. The gentleman sitting in the passenger seat up front got lucky. He was leaning forward at the side. My sergeant that was right there was leaning forward at the side, sending a message on a piece of equipment that we have in the vehicle to communicate between vehicles. And if he'd have been sitting back, it probably would have taken his head off, but he came out unscathed. My driver was not so fortunate, had some shrapnel bounce off the windshield and hit him in the head and ended up taking his life. We had 2 gentlemen in the back that were scouts that were also supposed to be lookouts for anything inconsistent in the environment. They suffered minor injury. So when it happened, all of the communications in the vehicle completely went off. All the lights on the vehicle completely shut down, and we were still moving forward. I had went from looking over the vehicle at the time to kind of staring directly through the windshield. So I thought maybe my legs were broke from the concussion of the blast or something. I had no idea that it was as serious as it was. The vehicle was still moving forward, so I thought, okay, we were just doing what we were taught to do, which is typically move out of the kill zone, find some place that's safe, and, do a casualty assessment, figure out what's going on from there, take care of any of the wounded. And the vehicle continued forward, and then it veered off and crashed into a wall, and at that point I knew something was seriously wrong. The sergeant sitting in the passenger seat had informed me that our driver had been hit and was seriously injured, and he couldn't get out of the door on his side of the vehicle, which we later found out the explosive came through the side of the vehicle with such heat that it actually welded his door shut. So he asked if he could get through my way, because I told him I had suffered an injury, but I didn't think it was that bad at the time. I was like, no, I'm good. I think my legs are broke. And when I went to go move, I fell back into the vehicle face up, and as he turned around to kind of come through to crawl through the back of the vehicle, he informed me that my legs were chewed up, were severely injured. I told him just to crawl over me at that point in time, that he wasn't going to hurt me any more than I already was, and he needed to take care of our driver because he was more seriously injured than I was. He got out of the vehicle. I spoke with the two guys that were in the back, trying to make sure that they were okay, trying to get them to calm down a little bit, because one of the guys had suffered a little bit of, not shrapnel, but like stone and sand and other things to the face. Tried to calm them down, told them to get their weapons, get out of the vehicle, pull security, help out. I dragged myself to the back of the vehicle, at which point I was met by one of the medics. They started to try to tourniquet my legs, but my thighs were so large that the tourniquets wouldn't go around my legs. About this time, I started to lose feeling in my hands. And, in the military, they teach you how to save all these lives and all the indicators, of what to look for when someone's dying. The only bad part about that is when you start dying, you know exactly what's going on. So I told him, I was like, listen, you got to get me out of here. Like, my hands are starting to go numb, like this and that. So they got me out of the vehicle, got me into a different vehicle, took me to a casualty collection point. Got lucky that where I was injured, they had a surgeon at that particular place that was able to assist immediately. They were able to stabilize me there, got me on a helicopter, and flew me out up towards Baghdad. Ended up kind of, I didn't lose consciousness, I guess, on the helicopter, but they hit me up, with the good drugs, and that, made me a space cadet at that point. So I don't really remember a whole lot of what happened after just kind of staring at the stars on the helicopter, thinking that, my younger brother wasn't going to be burying me, that I wasn't going to let that happen. And, but I remained conscious. I was told later that I had 4 major surgeries up in the trauma area near Baghdad before they stabilized me enough to send me to Germany. Ended up having a few more surgeries in Germany. During this time, they were having issues keeping me stable. I died a few times, so much to the point that they thought they were going to have to expedite my brother out of country. So my brother was back home on stateside with a bag ready to go after he was notified that I'd been seriously injured. They didn't think I was going to make it out of Germany, so they were getting ready to expedite my brother over to Germany to basically say goodbye to me. But ended up stabilizing enough for them to get me back stateside. Spent a couple weeks in a coma. And then after that, my physical therapist and occupational therapist, they come into my room and, they're introducing themselves, saying this is who they are. And they asked me to grab one of the bars above the bed, that I don't know what they use, the little triangle looking thing, and say, can you grab this? I'm like, sure. And they're like, can you sit up? And I sit up, and they're like, great first day. And that was kind of day one of trying to get my life back together at that point was, can you sit up? So, yeah, after that, spent the better part of 2.5 years in the hospital, had around 60 major surgeries, just trying to figure out how to get my life back together, just, get back to what is now going to be the new normal. Not even thinking or considering about doing a lot of the stuff that I do now, just how am I going to live daily. So,
I mean, it's as horrifying as the situation was. I find it, that the fact that you were thinking of others, and it's something that you wish you could never let happen to anybody and change it. What's your thoughts on the war at the moment? Have you made peace with what happened, or is it still something you struggle with daily?
No. To be honest with you, I really wasn't angry even kind of from the get-go. I understood that, we were there doing a job. I understood that the people that we were fighting against, they were there doing their job, and it was what it was. It was what it was. It is what it is, however you want to say it. If the shoe was on the other foot, I would have, we would have taken their life if we would have found them before they got to us. So it's just, it's the nature of the beast. So I can't be mad at it, in all honesty. So it's not something I let bother me. I knew as an adult when I joined the military, especially one that was so entrenched in war, that there could be possible side effects. Now, to be honest with you, I was fully fine with possibly dying. I never thought that it was going to be like this. I didn't expect to suffer some sort of catastrophic injury and have to live with it after this. So I can say that in itself was unexpected. I guess I really hadn't prepared for that. You kind of prepare for one or the other. I'm either coming home or I'm not. Nobody ever really tells you about that in between ground. So yeah, that was unexpected for sure. But no anger, no animosity.
I mean, I find it remarkable because, we have a society where small incidents can make somebody show hatred and emotion. How do you think you bounce back from something that would, well, in my opinion, would crush lesser men? You've turned your life around and inspiring others. Is in your way of thinking, how did you manage that? Was it?
It wasn't something like overnight. Let me put it that way. There's definitely low points. There's definitely frustrating moments. The best way that I kind of like in my situation is that you've lived a life and you know how things are done. You know how to do things, and then you have to start over. It's like being reborn again, like a baby, but you still have all of this knowledge of how to do things. But now you have to find a new way to do these things. And it's trying to find the patience and figuring those new ways out. So there are absolutely moments where, I was on the floor wanting to throw my wheelchair out of a window, just fuck this thing. And, for all the things that I do now, there are plenty of personal moments or private moments that absolutely the level of frustration was through the roof. Or it was just like, I'm done with this, or why does it have to be this way? And I don't know, a lot of it I think goes back to kind of just how I was raised. I was just, we were raised to understand that things happen and that, my father used to say, I distinctly remember a conversation with my father. I couldn't have been maybe but 10 or 11, and we just lost my grandmother. And my grandmother had been living with us since I was like 2 or 3 and had raised us. And we just lost her to cancer and, was just sad. Came home from school and the chair that she was always sitting in the kitchen to greet my brother and I, she wasn't there and it was empty. And I remember I was just crying. And my father, he got home from work and, I was just crying. And he took me and he sat down and he was like, he's like, listen, he's like, we're Kolchars. He's like, we're survivors. He's like, we get through this. He's like, life is going to throw shit at you sometimes. And he's like, but you're tough. He's like, you're a Kolchar. We are survivors. This is what we do. He's like, we will get through this and we will be fine. And I don't know, I really think a lot of the attitude that I carry now with me resonates back to that conversation, because I think to myself, am I making my grandmother or my father proud? What I'm doing now, is this something that they would be proud of? Am I getting through this the way that I know I can, the way that I was taught that I can get through this? And, that's not something that other people have. That's a personal experience that I'm able to draw on. But other people, they might have some sort of personal experience or something that they need to draw on. It's just figuring out what it is for them that gives them that intestinal fortitude to want to keep driving forward or to make themselves better. But for me, I distinctly remember that moment growing up where I was told this is what we do. We're survivors. We get through shit. So.
No, and I can definitely say that they'd be proud of what you're doing, because you've done so much for other people. There's so much love for you on the Facebook page, and was there at the time when the accident happened? Was there anything that you distinctly remember that made you laugh or you felt really funny? Was there something that kind of a light in the darkest moment, or? As cheesy as that question sounds.
No, it's
was there a positive that maybe you can remember, or?
It was, in the beginning, it was kind of just getting the nerve to talk about kind of what had happened. and now, like I shared my story with you a little bit about what happened, and I've shared it with plenty of other people, and it's interesting because you say, you have this effect on people, and these people just really support you, or you're helping change lives. And, it's kind of ironic because me having the opportunity to share my story is therapeutic in a way for me. So I think it was kind of like the first time I was able to actually talk to somebody and be truthful, because, sometimes you give people just versions of what you want them to hear. And I think it was the first time that I was able to, truthfully tell the story in its entirety and kind of what I was going through in my head in those moments, and share that, share those personal thoughts that I think really allowed me to see that, this is kind of helping me by doing this, and, kind of seeing how the reaction from the gentleman that I was speaking to, kind of seeing his reaction of maybe drawing some energy or something positive from me at that same time. So it was, I guess maybe at that point, it was a silver lining that, reflecting back, I think it was huge. In the moment, maybe I didn't quite realize how important it was, but I think maybe that was kind of the very first step for me in being able to wrap my head around the situation and maybe trying to take this forward in a positive way.
No, I'm really, really blown away by the positivity and the way you look out in life. It's amazing to think that Sam would, go into depression, despair, and you're looking to what you can do with it, So how did you get into doing challenges? I mean, you've done some amazing things, but what on earth made you want to carry a stone around an assault course and things like that?
After I was injured, it was a lot of just, this is kind of what you're able to do. It was a lot of the physical therapy, occupational therapy community at that point in time. We're talking almost 10 years ago now, 9 years ago. It was very clear cut. People were definitely doing their recovery out of textbooks, and the majority of the patients that these people were used to dealing with were usually like elderly people or people that were out of shape or things like that. And here's Walter Reed, this epicenter of young, active individuals that have now suffered some sort of severe trauma, and it's like all of these years of education, and going step by step for like treatment out of these books doesn't work, because here you have a bunch of young, guys and some gals that they still want to live their life. It's not about just can we get these people to just be able to do their daily tasks, normal things that a person does, like get up and use the bathroom and care for themselves and be able to go grocery shopping. Like that's where they were at that point in time. So when I was going through there, and I continued to want to try to push their recovery efforts, like I want to try this, I want to try that. It was very much like met with concern. And sometimes you'd have to tell these providers, you're like, listen, I literally took a bomb to the ass. I'm not fragile. Like, I can try this, and if I fall, so what? And it was completely blowing some of these PTs' minds, that mindset of I'm not fragile, I can take it. And it wasn't just me. It was a whole room full of guys and girls that were just like me. And so in the beginning, it was a lot. You're constantly being told, this is what we expect from you. This is about as far as you're going to get. And then, I was introduced to a group called, Achilles International, and they out of New York, and they do hand cycling. And they're like, hey, how would you like to hand cycle a marathon? And I was like, piss off. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And they kept asking for probably, at least a year. They would come from New York once a month and say, hey, do you want to go outside, give this thing a try? Finally, after about a year, I gave into it, and I went up to New York. They do this thing called Hope and Possibilities. It's in Central Park. It's 5 miles in Central Park. like the third weekend in June every year, and it's not just veterans; it's everybody from they have children's programs all the way up to their veterans program, which is what I'm in, and they want to get people out, and they want them to start, try to be able to show them that they can still do something. So I go out on this hand cycle, and it's basically a wheelchair that sits really low to the ground, has these arms up front that are similar to like pedals on a bicycle, but you use your hands to push it, hence why it's called a hand cycle. And did 5 miles around Central Park in New York, and was like, this is amazing. The wind, it was going fast again, and it was outside, and it was just nice because it was kind of like I was on my own. It's, some people like to run, and sometimes the reason they like to run is because that's their way of being in their own head with themselves, to think about whatever and just enjoy nature or the outdoors or whatever the case may be. And for me, it was like, wow, this is amazing. It's something that gets me out, that I can do on my own, that I can be left alone to my thoughts, and I'm outside and I'm breathing in the air, and I just feel great. So I expressed interest in wanting to do my very first marathon here in Detroit, Michigan, which was my home base. Michigan was my home. So they let me borrow a hand cycle, and I did my very first marathon. Albeit I didn't train for it much, and I made the mistake of going out with my brother and my cousin the night before and drinking, so I wasn't really, but I did it, and really what got me through that wasn't that I was like necessarily physically prepared for it, but it was just grit. I was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to finish it. So it wasn't great. I was hurting for days afterwards, but I finished it. And from there, that's really what kind of got the ball rolling on, well, what can I do now? So now it's like I want to start training and see how far I can push myself in this. And then, with that, a couple years later, I got introduced to CrossFit, and CrossFit was really another game changer for me. Because I had powerlifted in high school. I'd always liked the gym, the traditional, what some might call bro lifting, like your bench, your squat, your deadlift. That's what I'd done growing up in high school for sports. I'd powerlifted. That's what I knew. And CrossFit was something completely different. And it was interesting to me. And a buddy of mine wanted to see if we couldn't figure out how to adapt programming for an individual like myself. So, I started out, not being able to do hardly anything. The unique thing about CrossFit is it's, like gymnastics and lifting and Olympic lifting and cardio all wrapped up into one at any given moment. And so I started doing stuff like that, learning how to, do pull-ups and learning how to do, move my own body weight around and move my own body around. And I started doing this, and that's when I really started to lose weight. The hospital had ballooned me up to 360 pounds because I was just not doing anything, and they had me on a ridiculous diet, and I was just fat. And then I retired, and they were like, oh, you don't have to do anything now, you're good. And I was just lazy and retired. And then, doing the hand cycling and then getting into the CrossFit really changed my whole world. Ended up losing a little over 100 pounds so far. Still have some weight to go. Still like to lose another 40 or 50. But the CrossFit really changed my life because now it showed me how I could move my own body weight around. And it really taught me to get out of my wheelchair and start doing things. Because when I first started, I was always trying to figure out, how can I do this in a wheelchair? How can I do this in a wheelchair? And I finally realized that the wheelchair was actually kind of a prison. The wheelchair was actually preventing me from being as mobile or as active as I could be. It's great to use day to day to get around, but it just was preventing me from being able to, really do what I can do. So once I started doing that, I started getting this idea of, maybe I can push this even farther. What can I do to kind of push this farther or take this to the next level? And it was, I've always wanted to do one of these obstacle course races. They just looked fun, and I wanted to see if I could do it. So a friend of mine who I was at the hospital with, he had gotten into doing Tough Mudders and some Spartan races. And we were at the New York City Marathon together, and we were at a dinner the night before, and I was telling him, hey man, I'd really love to do one of these races. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, I have a great group that I do these races with. And he's like, I think that would be awesome. Let's try to put something together. So, ended up getting in touch with a group called Oscar Mike. So it's a veteran-owned apparel company, and they also have a foundation that helps sponsor and keep veterans on the move and active. So on Memorial Day, 2015, I went out to Miller Park in Milwaukee, and we did a Spartan race out there where we basically crawled around the baseball field. Well, I crawled around the baseball field. And the rest of the group, that was there, they did the race, and certain obstacles that I needed assistance with, like walls and things like that, give me a boost to grab the top so I could try to get up and over it. And we started as a team, we finished as a team, and that was really a game changer for me. That's what really changed. And I know I've said this a couple times. I guess I've kind of had a progression on these kind of like life-altering events or doing things with these groups that have just been life-altering, and they really have. But yeah, that changed things because I started to see that, how far I really could push myself. So, and it's just kind of been one of those things since. I continue to try to push myself in a different dynamic. The obstacle course races, they're always challenging. I've done a few now of the shortest ones that they offer. In May, though, I'm getting ready to try Spartan's longest race, not longest, but one of their longer ones, which is going to be about 3 times the distance of anything that I've done. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's just, it looked like something I wanted to do. I really wanted to see how far I could push myself. And, it turns out, like anything in life, I mean, everybody thinks that they can do everything on their own, but like anything in life, somebody's probably helped you out in some small way along the way. And that's kind of how it was with Oscar Mike. We started together as a team. We finished as a team. They helped me where I needed it, and I, you'd be surprised, I even able to help some people where they needed it. And along the way, a lot of people told me that I was inspiring them to keep pushing. So, even in me just being out there, it turned out I was helping other people along their journey as well, which was, it was incredible. I can't say it's incredible in the moment while I'm out there because, I mean, it just sucks. Like, you there? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Somebody tried to cut in on the call. But like I was saying, it's like, a lot of the people in the groups around me, like, they're having fun, and that's great. But like, usually when I'm out there, I'm crawling around. It's a long day. It's incredibly taxing. So it's not, I can't say in the moment it's fun. I can say, reflecting on it is the fun part. Thinking about the day is the fun part, but sometimes like living in those moments, you're definitely in the meat grinder, and it's not always one of those times where you're like, oh man, this is a great time.
I mean, I love that hand cycling gave you, your freedom back and your ability to go and do what you wanted to do.
Yes, so, I've mentioned
right
Achilles. I don't work for any of these. I just want to be clear, I don't work for any of these, but I do. I have volunteer time to speak at different things on their behalf to help support them. But like I've mentioned, Achilles International and the Achilles Freedom Team, I still hand cycle with them and do a lot with them. I'm going to be doing the Boston Marathon in April with them. Like Oscar Mike, I've mentioned them. I've done a couple of these Spartan races with Oscar Mike. Oscar Mike even sponsored me to go down to Wadapalooza back in January, which was a large fitness festival and CrossFit competition down there. They had an adaptive division, which was a first really in the CrossFit world, to have an adaptive division offered for actual competition. Got my ass beat, but I went down there. That was a truly humbling experience without a doubt. But it was what it was. The workouts didn't fall my way, and some of my weaknesses were shown, but it definitely inspired me to go back and work on some things that I'm not great at. So Oscar Mike's been fantastic in keeping me, on the move, as they say, and active. I do some things with Operation Enduring Warrior, or OEW. I've done a couple obstacle course races with them, and they've been a great organization. They really provide a lot of support when you're out on the course. They've been very inclusive. Like my wife has ran one of the races alongside me, and I know that for her that's probably been a pretty big deal. She talks about it quite a bit, so I get the feeling like it was maybe good for her as well to be a part of that experience. So, I mean, that's just been amazing to have, my loved ones included like that. But yeah, it's, those are probably the top three that I do quite a bit of the activities that I do with, and then I have some involvement with a few other groups, but not in the same capacity. Help for our disabled troops here in Michigan has been, I do a lot with them as far as their operations side of it, but they've been great to want to sponsor local athletes here in Michigan to try to get them out and active doing some of this sort of stuff. So I'm actually working with them right now to try to get, some Michigan veterans together and out to possibly do the Spartan race coming up in September, so that should be good.
I wanted to make sure that these charities got the recognition that they deserved, and I love that you're giving back to them. And something I did notice when I was researching into you was, you've got such a beautiful family.
Yes, so we just had our first son, Finnegan, back in July. It's it's been great. I've known for a long time that I've wanted to, be a father. Definitely have a son. But it was the experience as a whole was eye-opening and humbling. Like I said, I always known I wanted to be a parent, and the experience didn't really go the way we wanted it to. It took a couple of years, and in the beginning it was always, we'd love to have a son, but by the end we were just like, shit, we just want to get pregnant. We just want to have a healthy baby. We don't care what it is, and so it's amazing kind of how the process has really changed my mindset in that capacity, and definitely made me appreciate what we have now. But it's fun, I have the opportunity to try to impart some of my wisdom, the little bit that I may have, onto him, and try to hope that he can grow into be the best, the best person he can be and a productive citizen, and things like that. So it's just an opportunity for me to hopefully allow my family to grow. I always, I at least want my children to be better than me. So I'm hoping that, along the way, and we hope to have more kids, I'm hoping along the way that, they can take something from me and find a way to make themselves, better and make it, farther than I do.
Well, it sounds like you're both being amazing parents. At the moment, I've got two nephews and a niece. And I love being, the uncle, but I definitely want kids myself.
Yeah, that's how my brother is.
At the moment, I like to hand them back.
He's very distant
when they're
during the
crazy,
pregnancy, but
nice
man, as soon as Finn was born, he's really stepped up as an uncle. So he's been awesome, and he's the same way. He likes to be involved, but definitely when it gets dicey, he's like, here you go.
When it's coming to changing nappies and things like that, it's like, no, on you go. So I mean, is there things that you've learned, what would you say your top 3 tips are for being a better husband, a better father? I mean,
there's definitely, there's things I'm still learning, right? So I do a lot of stuff. I work full time and I'm traveling quite a bit. I definitely try to make my family a priority. I've always tried to make my wife a priority. I've always tried to make my brother a priority, because, They for the longest time have been the only family that I've had, and now I have a son. So a lot of it is you just have to, make the people that you care about or your family a priority, absolutely. And even I'm still learning that, it gets rough some nights by the time I leave work and I go to the gym and I get home and, I maybe see Finn for an hour or two at most, and I have to play with him the whole time because I haven't seen him all day. And then, maybe my wife feels neglected. I'm still figuring it out. I don't have all the answers to everything. I'm still figuring it out, but so I've been trying to find ways to, make sure that I show her that I still care about her, that she's still important to me because she is. So, family front's big. It's definitely something that's important. Other tips would be, you need to be able to find the positive in the situation. You need to be able to find the positive in any situation, right? So, life's always gonna shovel something at you, that isn't what you're looking for, but you have to try to find the positive out of it. Now, the positive may be you going through the situation, and it might not be something that's up front. The answer might not be up front. It might be something you just have to experience, and as you reflect on that experience, you can take something from it, and that's going to be your positive. But because a couple things that I believe, I definitely believe that suffering breeds strength. That's something that I preach because I think it's true. I think without us all going through something or experiencing something, then one, life's going to be boring, but you're not going to have anything to draw on, to give you that strength in the future if you really do become challenged by something. So, it's definitely finding something positive in those situations or those times whenever life seems to be the most trying. And I would say probably my third tip is it's attitude. We talked a lot about positivity, but it really is. I really believe that your attitude will dictate the outcome. If you go into a situation and you have a bad attitude, chances are you're going to have a bad outcome. If you think that these people are going to screw you or that, they're going to be whatever and you treat them that way, chances are they're going to deliver on exactly what you expect them to be because they're going to be a reflection of your attitude. So I truly think that, in any given situation, your attitude is going to dictate the outcome, and you just have to find a way. Sometimes it's hard. It's very difficult to maintain your composure. But a lot of times if you're able to maintain your composure, it kind of goes back to that whole, representing yourself and who you are, or if you're speaking or talking or representing something larger than you, it goes back to that. Not all situations are going to be easy. Some people will try to push your buttons, and it's just a matter of, maintaining, your attitude, maintaining that positive attitude, maintaining, an attitude that's going to allow you to get through that situation, in a positive manner. So. Right.
And there's that saying in there that if you point the finger of blame at somebody, there's four pointing straight back at you, and it's like you're saying it's all about how you adapt to the situation. It's how you handle the situation, and that if you can see the positive in something, you can certainly make the best of a situation. So see if people that you've spoken to, people listening, if they're using their excuses to hold themselves back from doing what they want. What kind of things would you say to them to inspire them to go after what they've been wanting to do? But
I would tell them, I mean, you have to find that purpose that you're passionate about, right? Because if they're allowing, I tell them, if you're allowing, these excuses to hold you back, is this something that you truly want to do, or is this something that you're truly passionate about? Maybe your attention's focused completely in the wrong direction. Because a lot of times if people are letting little things prevent them from doing something that they think is going to be life-changing or this amazing experience, chances are it's probably not as important to them as they think it's going to be. And maybe they need to find something that they're truly passionate about that will get them past being able to make them little excuses. So sometimes, people are just focused on the wrong things. A lot of times if they're letting small things or little excuses get in their way, chances are it's probably not something they truly care about or they're truly passionate about. It's just something that maybe they've at some point along their journey they've thought that they need this or they need to have this experience to validate something. But if you do or you find something that you're passionate about, that you care about, you won't have little things stop you. You won't have little excuses stop you, or you won't let them stop you because, you can tell when people are passionate about something. I mean, like, my wife sometimes, when we start talking about certain things, for me, it's like veterans and like people preventing, people allowing little things to stop them, things like that. When I start talking about some of this stuff, like sometimes she thinks I get upset, and I'm like, no, I just have so much, like I speak with such passion, like my voice just becomes so firm, and she thinks like I'm getting upset, and I'm not. And it's sometimes you just can't get how you feel out fast enough. That's how I know, like I was just telling her today, I would have never thought that I would be doing stuff within the fitness community and this and that if you'd asked me years ago. But the more that I get to do these things, the more people that I get to meet, the more people that I get to, have some sort of positive effect on or help maybe get past whatever barriers that they're facing. It cements for me that this is like the direction I should be going, because it just completely reaffirms the passion that I have, and it doesn't, like, the fire doesn't seem to like dwindle down. It seems to just like flare up sometimes, like the more I get into some of this stuff. So for me, I would say people just need to find what they're passionate about. When they do that, other people will see that they're doing something that they love, and they will surround themselves with positive people, and things will change. They'll notice their quality of life is different when you're doing something that you love, because the people that support you and care about you, they'll be the ones that are around you, because the people that don't, they'll fade away, and you'll see the impact that you're having not only on others but on your own life. So for me, it's always trying to tell people, if they're doing something that they love and care about, people will see it and they will be successful. Success isn't always measured by money or how much stuff you own or this or that or whatever. Sometimes it's just like what your quality of life is. Do you love waking up in the morning? That could be measured as success for some.
You can feel the passion when you talk about this. I can feel that this is something you're passionate about, and what's it to say? Motion creates emotion. If you're doing something that you enjoy and you're doing things, it makes you start to enjoy what you're doing. I've got a couple of friends who have disabilities and stuff. What do you wish people would remember about disabled people? Is there something that really annoys you about
there's this,
how...
For me anyway, I believe that there's this common misconception that
people with
a person that has a disability or is in a wheelchair wants a person that doesn't to feel sorry for them. Most of the time, those of us that have some sort of disability or barrier that's, sometimes I hate the word disability. I use barrier a lot, because I think sometimes disability has a negative connotation, and it's almost like meant to keep you down. But that's just my personal opinion. But a lot of times when you start dealing with people that have barriers to overcome, those people are strong. I mean, they, especially if you see them out in the world doing their thing, okay, they're overcoming some things just to do that. I mean, it's not just, when you get out in the world, especially me, like I have no legs. I mean, I might as well be like a carnival sideshow. People love to stare, and I get it. It's not something that people see every day, right? But, that's just one more thing that I could let, get me down or drive me indoors, but I don't. And it's like that for everyone. Somebody maybe has forearm crutches and they walk, awkwardly funny because of whatever their disease is prevents them from being able to have the mobility to have a typical gait. People are going to, people stare at that stuff, right? They stare at what's different. And most of the time, at least the people that I know that have, overcome something or that have some sort of barrier or disability, they don't want people's sympathy. Like, you can talk to me like a regular person. I'm not a special case. I get a lot of times, I have so many people that'll tell me good luck. Well, good luck with things. It's like, and maybe I understand that they couldn't fathom having to live life without legs, and maybe in their mind they're like, shit, if that was me, I would have eaten a bullet a long time ago. And, because I just sit there, and when they say good luck, I'm always kind of shocked. And usually, my knee-jerk response is, well, good luck to you too. Because I'm chuckling on the inside, because it's like, man, when a person just tells me good luck, I think they must think my life is shit. And I'm like, I think to myself, I do okay. I work, I'm able to do all these other things. I'm able to travel. I have an amazing family. And I'm thinking, what the fuck do I need your luck for? Like, I've created my own luck. So I guess I just kind of like chuckle in my head a little bit, because I'm like, no matter what this person has said to me and how nice they were, you know, at the end of the conversation, they go and ruin it. And they're like, good luck. Because to me, that's like their way of saying, you know, man, your life's over, or shit, good luck with that on your journey. So I think what a huge common misconception is just people think that we want sympathy, you know, those of us in this situation. And I think a lot of people miss the point that most of us are probably hard as fuck. Like, we've overcome some shit, and we're, you know, most people are probably tougher than they think. And, you know, we don't have to be like treated with kids' gloves, or you don't have to walk around on eggshells. Most of the time, you're probably not going to offend us. Most of the time, our humor is probably going to offend you, because we'll make like a cripple joke, or we'll even use the word cripple, and people, oh my God, you should see people cringe. And it's like, it's okay, I'm in a chair, you know? And it's just kind of funny, because sometimes I know myself and some other people will do that just for kind of the shock and awe value, just because it's like, okay, you know, some people are just being whatever, and it's like, it's time for us to separate, because you're not going to ever get it. But yeah, I think people completely miss the fact that if you have a disability, or you're in a chair, or whatever, that chances are you have probably overcome, and you are overcoming some great odds to be able to continue to live your life, and that's a strong individual.
I think that's an absolutely brilliant answer, and it's something that people need to remember is nobody wants sympathy. They just want to be treated like a human being. And something that I love to finish off these kind of conversations is a fast questions. So I throw a couple of statements out, and then a couple of words you reply back.
Right now, I've been digging Sidewalks by the Weekend.
Song, for instance,
I think I would consider him more like rap R&B, maybe. I guess.
Country western, or
so it's the Weekend and Kendrick Lamar. It's really good. Kind of just talks about like surviving through rough situations. Maybe that's why it resonates with me.
So is that your
to be honest with you, I listen to everything.
Or is there one that you
I mean, when I say everything, I mean everything. I have my playlists contain everything from country to rock to like rap to R&B, all the way to, I even keep some classical. So I mean, it really just depends. Every day is different, you know. Every mood's different, but I would say I've been resonating with that one quite a bit recently.
What would you say your favorite film?
I mean, well, let's face it.
Is there
Christmas favorite. Let's go with Christmas Vacation. That's always a winner.
But
yeah, I enjoy movies. For me, once again, I will watch everything. It's more of kind of a mood. But yeah, there are definitely some movies that will always draw you in. Usually something Will Ferrell-like will always draw me in and keep my attention, just because, you know, it's always fun to laugh, and he's ridiculous.
He is certainly something else, that guy. Who's your?
I'm gonna have to go with. I would say the Ninja Turtles. I know it's not one, but I'd say the Ninja Turtles. I like the Ninja Turtles. Same here.
You know, it's one of the first films I ever saw as a child. I loved the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, and I still remember that with the first one when they fought Shredder.
Same here.
It was just a phenomenal film. Still happily watch it to this day. Yeah. So, say you could have 5 people, alive or dead,
round for dinner,
round for dinner. Who would you pick?
Yeah, man, that's kind of a tough one. I would say, man, that's kind of a tough one. I definitely would want some historical figures. I definitely would like to hear what Lincoln would. I would definitely like to hear Lincoln's perspective on some things. I definitely think, you know, the history of America right now is definitely being put into question with everything. So it would be interesting, I think, to hear from some of the the key figures in American history. I'm sorry, I can't really get more specific than that, but I would say for me that would be interesting.
What do you want to be as a boy?
Growing,
is there a dream ambition for you?
I don't know. Maybe I always wanted to be in the military. I see photos of me running around always playing G.I. Joes as a kid, but I do remember when I was when we had to like look at careers and things that we wanted to do when we grow up in like middle school and in preparation for high school. I always used to be drawn to like aeronautical engineering, and I don't know why. It's nothing I've ever pursued, but I read into it and I really liked it, and that was what I always kind of like gravitated towards, and for some reason I never followed through as an adult. Followed through the G.I. Joe part though as an adult.
What's a guilty pleasure of yours that you'd want to admit to? Is it a dodgy song you listen to, or
yeah, I would probably say lasagna. That's like one of my all-time favorite foods, and it just doesn't fit with my lifestyle now. So usually on my birthday, maybe like once a year, I'll make like a pan of lasagna and treat myself. But that's about it.
So who inspires you? You know, are there people on a podcast, or is it maybe family, or you know? I mean, you inspire
to be honest with you,
it's
a lot of my peers.
Somebody that you look up to, or
I had, being at Walter Reed, you're there with a bunch of other individuals that have some sort of like amputation similar to your own on a different. They all vary, but there are a few different individuals that I was at the hospital with, and even met after the hospital. That I see what they do, because we all do different things. We all kind of have our own little things, but there are other guys and some girls that are out there that are doing a lot of things and staying active and pushing their limits. And to be honest, I draw a lot of inspiration from them, seeing what they're doing, seeing how they're pushing themselves. And sometimes I'm like, man, I don't know. I look at some of the stuff some of my friends do, and I'm like maybe I'm not pushing myself enough. Or sometimes they inspire me to try to do some of the stuff. I told you I had a friend that does these obstacle course things, and I was like, that looks like fun. And so he kind of inspired me to see what I could do. So I don't have any great sports figure or somebody that's famous. It's actually just a bunch of military vets that are like missing limbs or something, that continue to push their boundaries and continue to find new ways to do things and have different adventures. So a lot of times I draw my inspiration from, I would say my peers.
So what is the ultimate challenge for you? Have you got another thing apart from?
I would try to climb a mountain.
What would you?
It's on my list of things that I would like to try to do. I'd like to work my way into that. So doing some of these obstacle course races are, I guess, maybe an unconscious way of me trying to like build up my stamina, see what I can do. I would like to summit a mountain. It doesn't have to be a large one. I would be perfectly satisfied with anything here in the continental U.S. Or maybe Alaska would be fun. Go up and mess with Denali, but just because Alaska's Alaska. But I don't have the desire to summit the tallest one. But I would love to climb a mountain at some point and just be like, yep, did it. Can still do whatever. And then right about that point where I'm feeling amazing, I'm at the top of this mountain, it'll sink in that I still have to crawl back down the mountain, and it'll just be like, shit. But yeah, so I don't know. That's on my bucket list. I saw something on the internet where you can do this adventure where you can do like sled dogs up to the Arctic Circle during a certain time of year as the ice breaking, and you can see like polar bears like diving in the open water to fish, and you can like scuba with narwhals and shit. Maybe if I can decide to save enough money, maybe I'll go do something like that. I think that'd be cool. Figure out how to do some snowshoes on prosthetics or something. So I have a couple like big ones on my list of like things that I would like to do, but a lot of what I'm doing now I think are kind of just ways of me trying to see what I can do. That way I don't maybe get in over my head with some of these other ones. And I still think even if I wasn't over my head, I'd find a way to figure it out. But yeah, so those are a couple of the big ones on my list of things that I would really like to try to do.
You have quite an interesting nickname.
Yeah, it's the Raging Panda, and
can you just say what
so
it is?
That is a nickname that came from my time at Walter Reed, and how it came about is actually an interesting story, and it's actually it's actually transitioned a little bit over time. So how it originally came about, when I was in the hospital and I was a single, freshly injured soldier. I would ask the nurses and the people that were taking, the females that were taking care of me, I would constantly ask them to go out on dates and how they were doing and things like that. And my orthopedic surgeon, the one who did all the revisions on and did my amputations, everything like else, funny guy, amazing guy, dubbed me the sexual harassment panda from South Park. Well, because I'm missing the limbs and being the bigger guy that I am. People used to be like, "Oh, you look like a panda bear." And then, if you ever looked into pandas, all they ever do is eat and sleep. So there was a period in recovery where all I ever did was eat and sleep. So, they were kind of likening me to a panda bear at the time. And then my surgeon was like, "Yeah, I'm going to call you the sexual harassment panda bear because every time you come out of surgery, you hit on the nurse that's there." And so that was kind of the running joke for a little bit. And then as I've started to, so I've always been a panda bear. And that's kind of been the running joke that I'm a panda bear. And then as I started doing other stuff, my brother would joke around and be like, "Oh, you wouldn't like him when he's angry," like they say about the Hulk or whatever. And, he's an angry little panda. And then that turned into, the raging panda as I started to do more stuff. So it's kind of evolved over time. But yeah, they kind of always likened me to a panda bear at the hospital, and it's just kind of stuck with me. And then as I've started doing more of this stuff, kind of just picked up the whole my brother and some close people started just calling me a raging panda there because they're basically saying that it was just becoming unstoppable. So, and that's kind of just how it stuck, and it's fun. Everybody loves panda bears, right?
Well, it's certainly something that kind of maybe double take when I seen it. I watched the video of you on the assault course, and then I saw you.
I always joke around. I'm like, you don't ever see anything in nature mess with panda bears because everything else in nature knows better. I just, it's just kind of a joke because the whole panda thing. So you always get people that are like, "A panda bear, huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you ever notice you never see anything in nature messing with a panda bear? You never see anything trying to hunt a panda bear?" I was like, because the other animals know better. They just let the panda just chill.
So say if you had all mankind right now listening, are you, the floor is yours. Is there anything that you want to say to people listening? Is there any?
I'll totally steal it from a Will Ferrell movie. Everybody love everybody. I think that's. I think at the end of the day, if I was able to just talk to everybody, that would be the message. Having had the opportunity to do some of the things that I've done, be in some other parts of the world I've been in, and just a lot of the experiences. Definitely learned that most people are just trying to live and get along, but it's just different ideologies and backgrounds that seem to just get in the way sometimes. So I would say if everybody just maybe sat down and had dinner together, that would be cool, because I was definitely in the military. Food in the military is definitely a bonding factor. The military is built up of people from all these different backgrounds. And I tell you what, you start cooking for each other and people start kind of showing you where they're from and you show them where you're from, through your food. I mean, that just right there builds bonds, and you start to appreciate other people, other cultures, where they're from, what they're about. So yeah, I would just say everybody love everybody. I mean,
it's a good message. Well, unfortunately, if more people listened to it, we wouldn't be in the mess we're in now. So, I mean, I truly cannot thank you enough for taking the time to do this. You've blown me away with your outlook on life, and you've inspired me, and you're honestly one of the nicest people I've had the pleasure to speak to so far. Is there a way that people can keep track of what you're doing, sponsor you if you're doing competitions or
absolutely right now have the Raging Panda on Facebook, Instagram, have Instagram and Twitter, can be found on both of those to kind of follow along, see what I'm doing. I can be reached through all of those. I can be reached through all of those forums. Going to actually be starting actually going to be booting up my own website, kind of blog here within the next week or so. That's going to be The Adaptive Man, more or less going to kind of chronicle what I do day to day. Well, not day to day, but some of the things that I do, some of the adventures I go on, how I've adapted, how I've adapted parenting. Just kind of address some things that I couldn't find out there. There was a lot of when I was getting ready to be a father, trying to find how things were done or how I could do things, and I don't know, just going to kind of share my story and share my journey, and it's going to be a little more personal than maybe what I have on some of my other social media sites, because like I say, it's going to address like parenting and how I parent and things like that as far as an adaptive individual. So that's going to be hopefully up and running within the week. But yeah, I can be reached through all of my social media. I absolutely do motivational or inspirational speaking in any capacity. I can 100% customize my message towards the needs of the individual. I've spoken with schools, at-risk youth. I've spoken for large companies, and as well as nonprofits and everything in between. So it's 100% something that I love doing. I bring a lot of passion to it. I talk a little bit about my story, and I talk a lot about having a purpose and finding a purpose, and working towards that, setting goals. So I can absolutely bring a different dynamic into anybody into any situation, and can completely customize it towards their needs.
I'm more than happy. I mean, I really hope it takes off, because you're, honestly an amazing person. You've motivated me, inspired me, and I'm sure you're just going to continue from strength to strength. Obviously, I'm not going to say good luck, but I just want to thank you, Nick. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've had a great day, and you've just blown me away even more. So I'm really
no, just thank you. I really appreciate it, and I'm humbled that you'd even want me to share my story. So thank you very much. Likewise, it's been a pleasure. You've been fun to talk to. You've asked some great questions, and hopefully I gave you some great responses. So thank you again for, like I say, just inviting me to be a part of what you do. That means a lot. Thank you.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.